Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm going to talk about Father's Day today. This video won't be up till tomorrow, which is Monday, June 16th. Today's Sunday, June 15th. But this a little bit of stuff came up for me about this. I usually don't talk about holidays because I don't like them and don't celebrate them. Like, we don't really do anything for holidays. I didn't really enjoy the holidays so much when I was a kid because my family sucked, right? So one of the things that I believe wholeheartedly is I don't believe in family obligations now that our families are broken and the system's broken. Family is essential for a healthy society, and we're going to need families in the future. But those of us who grew up in a broken society with broken families, and that's pretty much everybody, when our ancestors left the tribe, left the farm, they were forced out or they voluntarily did it, whatever it was, and they went into cities, which were basically places for isolationists, right? People are lonely and they want to pair up and couple up, but with the high rate of divorce and kids spending most of their time at school and now spending all their free time online, and the family unit has been decimated with both parents working. And, it wasn't like the family farm where everybody would work together. And, there's this idea of soul families, right? That you have these group of souls that come down together. You have significant people in your life, people who are just stand out. You have a connection with them on a much deeper level than your biological family. And that's so often the case now, where biological family members are not connected. There's so much. We talk about the generational difference and all those things. And so when you spend time with your families, it's time, you're miserable. And you have these holidays. And if you're not, great. Like, if you're not, that's a great thing. Like, it's, of course you're gonna do it. But if you're doing it just out of obligation, that shit doesn't exist anymore because of the breakdown of everything. The end of the Mahabharata war in India was the bringing in of the Kali Yuga. And in Kali Yuga, there's these 4 different yugas. There is the Kali Yuga is the shortest one. And the next one is the Sata Yuga or the Krita Yuga, which is the golden age, the Treta Yuga, which is a silver age, and the Bronze Yuga, the Varpara. And so the next one's the longest one. It takes up about half the time. Now, there's some debate in when the Kali Yuga ends. There's some people that think these are like 500,000 year periods, which of course is, beyond our ability to comprehend that length of time. Other people say it's like whatever, 5 to 10,000 years. But the Kali Yuga is the shortest. And so it probably isn't going to end soon. Whatever, people think or not. It looks like it's going to be, there's a difficult transitional period between all the yugas when one age ends, and, even when you're transitioning from something bad to something good. Because, this is the age of iron, which is considered, like if you're thinking about, comparing gold to iron, but this idea of, the weapons, the violence, the low consciousness, the selfishness, the breakdown of the family, and it just keeps on getting worse until it, we come close to annihilating ourselves, and then there is a golden age that opens up after that. So it's a period of deprivation, going the wrong direction, and selfishness. And so the age of Dharma ended when the Kali Yuga began about 5,000 years ago. And so that was the age of Dharma means duty. And so, when you have a duty-based society, which is in the other 3 yugas, you have a lot less freedom to do wrong. Everything's based in, even if you're manipulative about it, you're sneaky about it, you're shitty about it, there's still some level of performance and this idea of honoring the elderly and all these types of things, the family and all these ways that even if your family sucks and you have to suck it up and and you just can't choose out. There's so much enmeshment, and there's so much pressure societally. The yugas aren't just about India. It's a global phenomenon. But India still retains some of these old teachings, and they're falling apart. The old the family unit, and there's a lot of enmeshment in the family there, good and bad. A lot of emphasis on supporting your parents, and these things. The family unit is just there's a lot more pressure involved, and there's a lot more societal pressure. The fear of being shamed, the fear of losing face, these types of things, right? And you see that that's dissipating, where people just don't give a fuck anymore, right? And it's hard to live a dharmic life, a life of duty, in a selfish society. And so, just to waste your time, and we have relatively short lives, and these holidays that just are miserable, where everybody's miserable just because you're supposed to do it, because it's the holidays themselves suck, the ideas behind them. Christmas is no longer really about Christ. It's really never was, because they were trying to get the pagans to, join Christianity. And so they hijacked the pagan holidays. And they said, instead of celebrating the solstice, celebrate Jesus' birth. And there's a lot of shit about the solstice. Of course, Easter is about the goddess Stora, and that's the spring equinox. And so they celebrated these, 4 times of the year, the longest day of the year, the shortest day of the year, and the spring equinox, these midpoints, and the fall equinox, right, which is Halloween. And so what they've done is hijack these holidays. First, Christians hijack the holidays to make them Christian and not pagan. And then the corporations hijack these holidays to make them commercial and not religious. And so they're just goofy holidays. And, the family unit has been decimated, and the majority of family members don't like each other. If you do like each other, then holidays are good. If you enjoy each other's company, it's a wonderful thing. But my family didn't enjoy each other's company. And I recognized that when I was a kid. My siblings who had moved out of the house, they all had their resentment and anger towards my incompetent parents. And, my parents weren't really big into the holidays. Like my mom, I think, thought it was a burden, because most of the stuff fell on her to cook, and she wasn't even that good a cook, and she didn't enjoy cooking. And my dad was, just an asshole and really oblivious. And so, I just checked out of my family. This is going to be in the Journey series as well. I'm going to, this is kind of an interesting topic. I got some, funny kind of family stories. My dad was really narcissistic, and nobody really liked him. And, I remember when I was in high school, my dad would, he wore bifocals, and he put the glasses on the end of his nose and would read the newspaper or something. And the way he chewed his food, and there was just something obnoxious about him at the dinner table. Like there was I don't want to call it trauma, but I remember my best friend from high school, his dad remarried, and somehow I ended up having dinner over their house, which is weird because that never happened for me, like where I had dinner over somebody's friend's house or something like that. And his stepmom was sitting next to me, and she noticed that my leg was nervous. Like my leg was moving, like nervously. I was just uncomfortable in those settings, sitting at a dinner table. And she put her hand on my leg like a stop, just not gently, not like as a, way to, just noticing that I was nervous or whatever. But I wasn't aware that I was nervous. It was just, I wasn't good in social settings, but I'd feel uncomfortable. But, and I realized that was because, my brother and I talked about this. There was something about sitting with my dad at the dinner table that everyone disliked. And there was times in high school that I just thought of stabbing him with my fork. Like I was contemplating it. Like he was sitting across from me and I'm just staring at him like hatefully. Like he would look me in the eye and I was like, I'm going to stab this motherfucker. And I wasn't I didn't have thoughts like that all the time, for anything else. Like I didn't have violent thoughts. Like I just, I now remember having any other violent thoughts where I thought of doing violence to somebody else other than my dad at the breakfast table. And there's a time where my sister, who's 10 years older than me, and she had kind of a weird relationship with my dad. And we were sitting there at the table together. My mom didn't know where my mom was. And my sister goes, and my dad goes, and they did this for like 5 fucking minutes back and forth. And then my sister goes, and slams her hand on the table and storms out. And my dad's laughing, and I'm staring at him like, you're fucked in the head, right? And he goes, what? Like, I had no respect for my parents after about 8th grade. I caught my parents in a lie. And I started smoking pot, and I just checked out. And my parents and I didn't have a conversation, basically, till I was much older. And the conversations were, at that point, me telling them, like, what to do because they were so incompetent. I was in my 20s, and, like, they had split up. And, and I gave them good advice, but, of course, they didn't listen because they were deeply flawed. But I realized my parents were incompetent a number of times during my life. The first, there's a few, like, I've told some of these stories. But one of them, my dad, I just knew was a fucking bozo. And, we were, like, I hung out with my dad for a while, when I was, like, real young. And, like, we were, like, buddies or whatever. Because I was, too young to know the difference. But, there was a number of things that happened. Like, I wanted to scale. There was we had this back porch, and there was a window that opened out, and there was a laundry line, one of those laundry lines that's on like a wheel. And my parents had put in a patio, but it was just cement with some stones in it. Like, there was like, per yard of cement, there was like maybe 5-inch stones. So the thing looked horrible. Like, it was just, I like, anybody could have done a better job than that. Like, just make it all cement. And I wanted to scale the wall. So I had some old, like, clothesline. And I was having somebody, my sister, I think it was my dad, was holding the rope. And he might have dropped the rope. And now that I think about it, I thought the rope broke, but now I'm not sure. So, because when I was a little kid, we were walking around a pond, and my dad and I were arguing about a lily pad that I thought, it was an unopened lily pad, and I was like, I think that's a frog. I'm 4 years old. This is my first conscious memory. And my dad goes, no, it's a lily pad. And my dad and I argue, so he goes, go grab it. So my dad holds my hand. I'm 4 years old. I'm wearing like little, like almost like a onesie, like red shorts and a red shirt. Like, I have a vivid memory of this. And I'm leaning over to grab the lily pad. Of course, I'm wrong, but I'm a 4-year-old kid. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, right? And my dad lets go of my hand, and I fall into what, there's this place called Elizabeth Park. You could look it up on fucking Google Maps if you want to have. But there was a pond there, and, we went to Elizabeth Park. It was when we were on the border of Hartford and West Hartford. Elizabeth Park had this, like, great rose garden, and it had this pond with an island in the middle. In the winter, we'd go skating there, and we'd go out to the island. And, it was a cool pond, but it was gross, it was a pond. And my dad drops me into this fucking water, right? I'm 4 years old. And he's laughing, right? And I had this, like, adult moment where, like, I had adult level consciousness, and it was like, this guy's a piece of shit, and you just can't fucking, like, I lost, like, all kind of respect for him, like, it was just, I was aware of, like, for a moment, like, this guy is just, you got a shit dad, and this is whatever, like, this, not in terms of him dropping me in a pond, just like he's a fucking child and a moron, right? And, for a little while, I forgot about that till I got, I was like 8 or 9 years old, and then, I just realized my mom was the least religious, and she had some good character qualities, and she definitely she was a spiritual seeker, but she was equally incompetent. And later on, she would tell me, when my dad and her split up for a little bit, when, after I graduated high school, and they moved down to Florida. And I said, why'd you marry him? And she said, because I felt sorry for him. And I'm like, what? Why the fuck would you do that? You married this fucking clown because you felt sorry for him? Like, why is that? What the fuck? Like, what are you doing with your? So, anyways, I'm scaling this wall. So it's about 8 feet off the ground, and so my feet are leaning against the wall, and I'm like rock climbing up the side of the wall. Had these sidings on it, and I get close to the top, and the rope, as I remember, it broke, but very likely could have been my dad dropped it, and I hit the ground, and I was running around like crying because the wind was knocked out of me. If you ever had the wind knocked out of you, it's like scary. It feels like you're going to die. And I was running around going, my back is broken. And they were all laughing at me. My family was because, that's the kind of family I had. So this kind of explain a lot about my current attitude, right? The other thing is like they would regularly wreck my birthday. And so, the holidays suck. And when I was a kid, one example was I got chicken pox when I turned 7, and my birthday's, in July, right around July 7th. That's what difference to me. So I got chicken pox before my birthday. So my dad wanted a pool, and he decided to make it a birthday present. Like when you see there's an episode of The Simpsons where Homer buys a bowling ball for Marge for her birthday. It says Homer on it, and it's obviously a present he's giving to himself because she's not going to want it. And it was kind of like that, right? So, it was supposed to be a surprise, and my parents are putting in a big fence. We had a fence on one side. There was this the Lyons family. Their last name was Lyons. Lived next door to us, and they had a dog called Blondie, which was a golden retriever, a sweet dog that used to put its face through the fence and lick my hand, and I'd go pet Blondie every day. Like Blondie would wait till I came home from school, and I'd go out there. And, this dog was kind of neglected, and it was just in this fenced area. And then we had our neighbors behind us had another like chain link fence, these kind of, they were both metal fences, two different kinds of metal fences. And so my parents put a wooden fence that was about 5 foot tall so that nobody would come and drown in our pool. Like they were scared someone was going to drown in their pool. And then there was a circle that was dug out. This is an above ground pool, something that's like a couple $100 at Walmart. It was probably 15 feet in diameter. And, I didn't ask for a pool, didn't want a pool. And they said, this is going to be your birthday present. And I came out and I'm like, what is it? Is it an ice skating rink? Because they were putting this metal rim around. They're like, no, it's a pool. And I'm like, well, I don't want a pool, right? And so my birthday rolled around. The pool was finally done. So like I already knew about it. There's no like fucking, anything. And everyone in my family went and swam in the pool. Like didn't swim because they could fucking, it was 4 feet deep. And it was like this little circular fucking pool, right? And I'm sitting there watching them on my birthday, and they're like splashing around. There were my 3 sisters were there. I think 2 or whatever it is. My parents. And I'm like, well, this isn't a fucking birthday present. Like, I'm just sitting there going, look, like, this is like torture. Like, I was a little kid, 7 years old. I want to swim in the pool. I'm like, these guys are incompetent. And, as my birthdays went on, they would ask me what I wanted. And I would say, if there was like a toy brand, like they made the same toy, I'd ask for the Coleco one. And they would get me the one from Mattel. Like, they'd always give me the wrong thing. And I would specify, like, I learned that I had to really specify, even show them a picture of the one that I wanted. And they would give me the wrong thing. Not horrible stuff, but just, the things that you would get for your birthday as a kid, you play for it for a couple of days, and then it would disappear. That pool only lasted 2 summers. Like, I swam in it the next year, and then my dad got tired of, chlorinating the water. I mean, it's a whole thing to have a pool. And like so many people, like the kids don't use the pool, and they ended up just it lasted 2 years. Then we had this stupid fence that we didn't need. And, my dad didn't want to spend any more money on my birthday, so he tried to put the two things together like a cheap fuck that he was. I tell my wife this story. My brother met this old friend of my dad. And he goes, I was there when your dad got his first car. And he said, he gets into the car and there's no armrest on the side, on the door. And these are old time cars, right? 1940s, 50s, whatever. And he goes, my dad's name's Ralph Romano, which is, should tell you everything. And he goes, Ralph, where's the armrest? And my dad goes, no, those are extra. And so, like, he was a cheap bastard. My mom was miserable because she married a guy who was, like, just she hated. And then she said she married him because she felt sorry for him, which is pretty much a bad idea to get married to somebody. Those marriages are kind of doomed to failure. And, she later would tell me that I was a rape baby, that he had forced himself on her. They were Catholic and whatever. And there was, she told me that when she came out to help with our third child, me and my ex's third child, who was born. It was right around my birthday, too, because she was born on the 11th of July. And my mom comes and tells me that, right? Like when we're bringing in new life to the family, like just stupid shit, incompetent shit, right? Like there's just always something with those guys, like just negative incompetence, just annoying, like whatever. Like just martyrs, my mom was a martyr. And, when you have kids and they have birthdays, you either really want to celebrate the kid's birthday, you really want to make the kid's birthday special. Birthdays are supposed to be about you celebrating somebody else's birth. Like when people celebrate their own birthdays, birthdays are like a measuring stick. They're a year of time. And you can contemplate, like, the New Year's is like a collective measuring stick. What happens in 2024, 2023. But for your birthday, it's a personal thing. And it's like, what happened? Where was I last year at this time? What progresses have I made? These things, right? It's it's just a good way to measure because you have these years of your life, and each one has a significance to you, and you can tell you're either going in the right direction, wrong direction. But for everybody else, your loved ones, it's a expression that they're happy that you were born, right? That that your birth is something special to them. And for parents, I remember each of my kids' birthdays as these special days. And I try to make their birthdays special, happy, and whatever. I mean, I don't think the kids appreciated the effort I made in, difficult circumstances. I'm not a holiday person, but, it was a celebration of their being born. And when a newborn or a baby's born, it should be a special day and celebrated in some way. But, it isn't because people don't think about it in the right way, right? Everything's now about materialism, right? Is about some, the presents and the material stuff and all of it. And so, that takes over. These things have all been hijacked by our system that says, all right, every way possible we can get you to spend money and want things, right, to, get these. I remember, like, my kids getting overwhelmed at Christmas with all the different presents, just kids in general. It's just too much stuff all at once. And, if you get like one cool thing as a kid, you could play with that for weeks, just that. Like, but if you have a bunch of different things, it's like too much. And, it's just the whole anticipation is just this like gross materialistic fucking thing when it's supposed to be about God, right? The birth of God to Christians. And, it's just been hijacked. So that's, all that stuff, making everything about materialism has hijacked all of these things, right? The candy industry hijacking Samhain, the pagan tradition of Halloween. And then, Thanksgiving is kind of a day to be grateful, but it also can be about sort of gluttony. And now with everybody being so, the generations being so different and everybody be divided over politics and all these things. These family get-togethers are just, miserable. And people think that they're obligated to make each other miserable and make each other suffer during these holidays. It's just silly. So, I'm just not into them because every day should be a good day. Like when you try to make some days special, they always aren't. Like special days and good days just come. It's not necessarily going to be on your wedding day. It's not necessarily going to be, on a birthday or a holiday, right? In fact, when you anticipate something, it makes it harder for it to be a special day. And, it might be a special day if you're not focused so much on it being one, right? So, I don't believe in all that stuff. Like, if there's real community and real family, then holidays and festivals are a celebration of those things, right? It's a celebration of the whole, whatever it is. So I don't pay attention to holidays, and we didn't really celebrate my dad's Father's Day. Like, I can't remember one Father's Day thing. I remember a little bit more putting some effort into Mother's Day, but it's a kind of the Mother's Day is kind of a bogus holiday because, good moms, they suffer and sacrifice and endure for their children. And then there's just like one day you're like, hey, we appreciate all that bullshit you put up with. And then it goes back to normal. It's not a real, I mean, it should be every day. Like every day you should be thankful for your parents and and even shitty parents do a lot for their kids. That goes unseen, right? You do all kinds of things your kids have no idea about. When I was talking about this where, my son didn't think I was good at finding things because we were out looking for morel mushrooms. And I said, why do you think that? And he was like, because there's a time where you lost something and you asked us to look for it and we found it. The 4x4 kids. And I'm like, that's your one like thing? Like you think that I wasn't good at that, right? Like, so, I mean, actually kind of good at finding stuff, but like, so there's all these things that they have no idea. Like they just don't know. And when you stop communicating and you don't have conversations or the kids don't listen to you anymore, which, happens at some point. My family, I didn't talk to them. So I made sure that I prepared my kids in any way possible. That I was there for them, present for them. And I was aware of what was going on with them to whatever extent and was able to sort of talk to them. And that had the opposite effect where they actually didn't want me to talk to them. Where my family, we didn't have like conversations. Like, I mean, I don't remember a conversation I had with my parents from the time I was like 10 years old till the time I was, in my 20s. Like, we didn't like talk at all. My dad was a guidance counselor. And so there's just, there's no consciousness. We were living completely separate lives. It's like you're in a house where you have roommates that you end up sort of hating and you don't really talk to each other anymore, but you can't stop being roommates because, you're locked into a lease or a dorm situation and you're just, it's almost like it's not really hostile, but you just don't really, you barely say hi or you don't even really communicate. And like it's that, and everyone's living separate lives, and you have no idea what the other person's doing, and you don't care. That was my family, right? Okay, so I just went for a little quick walk with my dogs. We already went for a walk this morning, and it poured so much yesterday. Our path and our pastures flooded, and I showed a little video in my last video, and my son stuck out. My son, and some stuff came up for Father's Day, not negative stuff, but just awareness. Because my son really knew it was Father's Day, which was a huge thing for him. So he, because he got the day off at work, and he usually works the weekends at his job, and he wanted to go spend it with one of his friends, which was great. I didn't want to I told my wife I don't want to do anything for Father's Day. I don't even want to acknowledge its existence because I don't care about it, and I'm not, and it brought up some stuff which I'll get into in a moment. But he left, and he said, "Hey, Happy Father's Day" to me last night at 12:30. Which was like something. But what I want to talk about here is obligation. That's what I'm talking about. Like doing something because you feel obligated to do it, as opposed to doing it because you really want to do it. You really want to spend time with people, and doing things out of obligation. Why would you want somebody to do something out of obligation for you? Like it feels yucky when somebody's doing something for you, but they're just doing it out of obligation. Like my mom saying she felt sorry for my dad. If you don't really want to do it, then it's, if you just feel like you're forced to do it, like people who want to force other people to do things, it's weird to me. Like I don't understand that at all. Like people should do it out of because they really want to, because that's the only thing that feels good, right? that's what I say all the time about viewers. And I also got a comment during this time. Let me read the comment because I'm going to talk about. I have this thing I'm doing with AI. Here's the comment here. As one of these loyal followers who watches pretty much every video you put out, I can say that this person isn't a loyal follower because they don't have the red mark of a frequent viewer or a comment mark. I've never seen their name before. So this person has in comment, let me go check real quick. The person left one other comment about us not having a usury system because they wanted to tell me I was wrong. So this is not a legitimate thing, right? This person saying this is a loyal viewer because they've left two comments. The first one I should have banned them, right? Because they're, again, being argumentative and, whatever words you want to parse in terms of being a usury system. We have a debt-based system, and it's completely fucked. And so, if a person commented all the time and was somebody I knew, somebody I'm like, oh, I recognize that thumbnail, I recognize that username, whatever. But the person writes, as one of these loyal followers who watches pretty much every video you put out, I can say from my personal experience that I have not been watching your most recent videos due to repetitiveness. Then why are you watching this one? Right? Why are you watching this one as opposed to the other ones? Right? Like, when I was talking about the economy, which wasn't, well, this is what the person says. I don't mind watching long videos. I actually prefer them, but it's essentially the same 2-hour video day after day about how much Trump sucks. It's just become a time sink. It's not the algorithm, at least not for me. So I can understand people being Trumpers and not watching the videos. But to categorize, again, this person's left two comments and they're both basically complaints. And there are 12 replies to this other comment, the usury one. The reason I'm covering Trump is because Trump's going full Trump. And it's kind of interesting. We've never seen it before. And it's going to lead to what I understand to be apocalyptic shit, right? So it's kind of my wheelhouse, right? I kind of have to cover it. Trump the way it is now because it's, a lot of shit's going on. And so it isn't the same video every time because we've never seen shit like Trump's doing. And, like I'm covering AI because also that seems to be leading to apocalyptic shit. And I'll get into that because I'm going to ask the AI about these things. But in terms of the algorithms, it's about recommending new viewers. And that's what I need. Because if I'm going to lose all the Trumpers, which made up whatever percentage of my audience, and this person's perhaps a Trumper, who knows, whatever they are. But, this is also, going back to what I was saying, fine, you don't have to watch. Like, I don't want to have people watch out of obligation, but I have a plan and a goal and about, I have an overview of what I'm supposed to cover and how it works. And right now, a lot of it's going to be Trump because of just everything that's happening with Trump. Because, this is real shit that's happening that's having a real effect on the world. The tariffs are a big thing. World War III is a big thing, potentially. All the shit that Trump's doing. And Trump had the opportunity to come in and change things. It wasn't going to make America great again or keep things the same. What he did in the first term, which was not really much. And, and my reaction to Trump was I covered how much the liberals hated him. I covered what Trumpers call Trump derangement syndrome. Because, Trump did some stupid shit, but for the most part, it was, wasn't what he's doing now. But he's definitely fucking going nuts right now. And it's worth covering. But either way, that's, let's get back to the main point here. But, this is not quality feedback because I cover whatever I cover here. And there's a reason for it. And it's what is put in front of me. And if people don't like it, then they don't like it. Like, I can't change the way I do things. Like, I'm not going to pander to people and make specific videos. If people ask me to cover something, if they, send me links to something and I find it interesting, I always cover it, right? If people, like, there's things I'm going to cover today that are clips that people sent me, some of the stuff with AI or whatever it is. People ask me to give my opinion on certain things, and I always try to accommodate them because, it usually makes for good content. If they want it, then other people do. But sometimes I have to dive into something that I don't want to dive into, at least, not at this particular time. It's like I have to learn the whole universe because I know nothing about it. So I have to learn about it before I have to learn what the official story is, and I have to understand how it works. Like, I really didn't cover AI until I started to use it. And then I saw some of these interviews and some of these things, and I realized, using it made me understand how fucking great it is. It is fucking amazing what AI can do. AI is, its ability to comprehend things and listen to you. Like, even that, because people don't feel listened to. So just to have this, what appears, it feels like you're having a conversation with another human who's really polite and really, makes it feel like you're worth listening to. And how many people need that in their lives, right? Like, I don't, because I talk about stuff here and, I realize it's not doing anything. It's helping some individual people, but it's not certainly changing the world, at least in terms of the grand scale of things. And so, I don't put as much value on that, but I feel heard anyway, right? There's people who want to hear what I have to say, and so that's great. But there's lots of people who don't have that. But anyways, things that are done out of obligation, I have no interest in. Like, I don't want people to feel like they have to watch the videos because my channel's, going down or whatever. It's like, if people want to move on, and even if they, they don't have to tell me why they want to move on or they're tired of me, I totally get it. Like, I'm not, it's a lot of content to listen to. It's a lot of me to listen to for, 2 hours a day. I understand why people want to move on. The issue is people do get value out of it for some period of time. And so I have to bring in new people, and YouTube has stopped that from happening. So that's what that's all about. And I'll get into that because I wrote something up for the AI. I haven't put it into the AI yet. I'll do that at the end of the video. I'll also include that in the Journey series. And so I wrote a long synopsis of what's going on with my YouTube channel, and I want to hear what AI and ChatGPT have to say about it, but that's for the end of the video. But anyways, this obligation. So I don't want my kids to do things out of obligation. I don't want, to spend time doing things out of obligation because it's a waste of time. It's to me pointless. And, I'm not saying everyone has to make their own choices, but I don't choose to use my time that way. Because, here's an example of, I worked at this job at a treatment center, my first treatment center job. And I just started Sajmarg, and I started to apply Sajmarg teachings to the job. And it worked tremendously. And me and my coworkers had this glory time, this golden time. And, ideas came to me. Like, I was like, these kids grew up with really stupid, obnoxious, oftentimes abusive, sometimes sexually abusive parents that were losers, low-life scum, and, who would come from a long line of low-life scum, most of them, right? And so they were, impoverished and living in, in abusive situations. And their parents were, horrible people. And there's so many stories of our interacting with their parents. And I said, we're like cool people. Like, we're, compared to what these kids, we're on a higher consciousness level than these kids. And one of the things is when you were hanging out with older people when you were a kid, like your older brother, your uncles, or your older sister, or whatever it was, right? Older people who kind of got it, right? And maybe your parents sucked, but you had a sibling or a relative that was cool and whatever, or older people that told you what was up. The kids would respond to that. They just naturally would. And I said, we got to frame it like that. Let's do fun things. Let's have cookouts on Saturday. Let's play lots of sports. And we tried different sports, and I figured out ultimate frisbee would be, frisbee football, ultimate frisbee was the game that we could play because kids weren't supposed to touch each other. And so in ultimate frisbee, there's not really any contact. These were little sex offenders. And every kid could learn to catch a frisbee, and we'd run the shit out of them. And we had no restraints because the kids were so fucking tired We played 2 hours of it, and the kids would run after the Frisbee, and they loved it. And we played almost every day. And so, based in my spiritual teaching, I had an influence, and I made this place like a really good job. And my coworkers were happy about it, and they liked me for it, and they appreciated me. And so my birthday came around, and I was working on my birthday. It was probably like a Saturday. I think it was a Saturday. And I didn't tell anybody because I didn't fucking, just because I don't give a shit about it. And at the end of the shift, when the kids were all in bed, they were like, how come you didn't tell us it was your birthday? They were ragging on me. And they got me a gift, which was like a shirt, which was, pretty nice, but it was cool. It wasn't important. But we had this Frisbee that we used, and I was quitting. It was like at the end, I'd already put in my notice. And we had this one, was an ultimate Frisbee. And we played it so much, it got stepped on, and sometimes two kids would grab the thing at the same time. They would catch it, and they'd tug a war over it, some things like that, right? And it ripped in half. Like it had a cut in it about 3 inches into the Frisbee. And so we had to buy, we had backup ones. But it had faded. All the lettering had faded. It was just we used it so fucking much, right? And they gave me that old Frisbee. They'd saved it, and they all signed it with their names. And it was very touching. Like it was because they really wanted to celebrate my birthday. And it wasn't a gift, like it was a useless Frisbee. But it was, it was moving, right? And they figured out it was my birthday, and they, went out of the way to do something about it. And, and I left, and I kept that Frisbee for a number of years, and it was sort of sentimental. But it really wasn't the Frisbee itself. It was it was something they wanted to do, right? They wanted to celebrate my birthday and make me feel, appreciated, right? But with the materialism the way it is, and people have to force to figure out a gift for people, I just, I had enough of it. And, we talked to our kids about it and said, we're just going to give you money and, whatever. And, all these things. And I just, it's something, if something comes from somebody's, heart. Another example of this is the second master of the system, Babaji. He was a relatively poor person, and people would come to his house, and he would feed them out of, he had probably, this is back in the 70s, which was the equivalent to like $20 or $30 pension, like per week or per month or something. And he would have people coming over, and he would feed all these people, and, he had very meager. He was he worked a civil servant job, and he wouldn't take donations, and there's no ashrams, and he really didn't accept gifts. But one day, some local guy who was, a poor guy, maybe an older person, and he got Babaji grapes, which is something that doesn't really grow, that wasn't very prevalent in northern India, especially at the time. They had their own fruit, but this guy got grapes, probably left over from the British, and he was so proud of this gift and was so loving that Babaji sat there and ate the gifts. They ate the grapes right in front of the guy. He didn't. Usually he would offer. He was a person with an ulcer, and he really didn't eat that much. He didn't have like a, he wasn't a food person. But because the guy had given them these grapes with so much love, he ate them, in front of him so that the guy would feel good about it. And even though he didn't want gifts, he didn't want these things. But because of, just the love the guy exuded with this gift, it was a big thing. So things like that, right? The opposite of obligation, where people, really want to do something. They really want to celebrate something. It's, and, and also they have to then figure out, there's people in your life who think about you and are sending you good, good wishes, good vibrations, and, they want the best for you, and they're taking an interest in you, and they're concerned about you. And they contemplate you. They think about you. They think about your situation and pray for you or whatever it might be, right? Really know you. They want to, they want to see you succeed. They want to see, whatever. And that's very rare. And like the majority of people, it's just, strangers going through life and not really knowing each other, not caring about each other, not taking an interest in the other person, not really expressing any of these things. And it's just all these false, superficial, expression of, obligatory, relationship bullshit, right? And so, having said all that, I was thinking about my brother, because, my kids are not, they haven't wished me a happy birthday or Father's Day really, out of any sense of, appreciation and love. And, not even out of obligation for some of them. And really, it's all, and mostly not at all, right? And I don't care about, because like all these things I said, but it's a barometer of, I had worked really hard to give my kids a quality life. Like I went through this whole thing I talked about, treatment center, where this kid was crying and he said he just wanted a family to love him. I've told that story a number of times. And my ex and I had wanted our kids to have a spiritual upbringing. Of course, we had the homestead, and we wanted to put them in a position to succeed. And then we were going to have an intergenerational family farm where we would all be together. But, my family sucked. My ex's family sucked even worse. And so, she was, abused by her dad sexually, and her mom was even worse and crazier, according to her and her brother. Her mom had a personality disorder. So somehow her mom was worse than her sex offender dad. Like her dad sexually offended her, but the mom was worse. And so, there's mental illness in that family, lots of shit. And my family wasn't great. So, this idea that somehow our family was going to be somewhat better was kind of irrational. But part of that was our spiritual organization. And one thing, the Sizemore system has delivered for me. The teachings have delivered for me. And, the philosophy, the energy, it's been transformational. But the one teaching that my ex and I both read and believed in was that Master Charji had said that these souls that are born into this mission, to this people who do the meditation, are choosing to be here. And that birth control is actually a bad thing, because you should just let the amount of souls be born that want to be born into a family situation, because there are plenty of shitty places to be born. There's plenty of shitty parents and shitty people, and I'm not saying just poverty or wealth or things. I mean just consciousness and a lack of love. Like, so many people don't have the ability to love, and spiritual beings don't have many good places to be born in. They, to be spiritual, you need like a loving situation. Like, spiritual people are sensitive, and you can't be born in some remedial, low life fucking environment with stupid, low vibrational people that are double digit IQ. Even if they're nice and simple, you need to have the proper amount of protein. You have to develop a certain level of intelligence and consciousness. And so people who have predisposition, souls that are predisposed to spirituality, there aren't many good environments to be born in. Of course, poor people, underprivileged people, people who don't get enough protein, people who don't get enough, there's so many poor people in the world. Just, you're being born into a situation where you're going to be very limited based in your circumstances and the amount of resources that you have available to you, including food and nutrition and things like that, and education and consciousness. And rich people, like he said in the talk, wealthy people often don't have kids. In fact, one of the ways to reduce the population is to educate people and give them a better life, because people who have a better life and enjoying their lives tend not to have as many kids because they're pretty happy with their lives, where poor people are hoping that their kids will somehow pull them out of poverty. They look at their kids as being part of a labor force, and and they don't have maybe the resources for birth control and these things, or the consciousness. So poor people often have a lot more kids, right? And so, this idea that spiritual beings were looking for quality places to be born was something my ex and I both believed, and we were both really into the Sizemore system. At least I thought she was, which now she kind of, well, whatever it is. I don't, I can't really qualify it. But, this idea that we would raise them in a spiritual way and focus on the teachings and the system. And of course, the homesteading was part of that. And, the family, the intergenerational family farm, and it all fell apart. And, if it was just us because of the mental illness and my ex being so fucked up, her family and her genetics and whatever, that would be understandable, right? But this was, there was all these people there was all these practitioners of the system that, before I was married, when I came into it in 1993, I wasn't married and didn't have any children until 1998. So for 5 years, I went to these gatherings, and there was all these kids there, and they looked like special kids. They were intelligent, and, they looked like spiritual kids. And, if you talk to some of them, the older ones, They seemed to be like, bright and, just different, better, gifted. And so I thought these kids were all going to do Saj Marg. And some of the Indian ones would, out of obligation for their parents, but the Indian kids that grew up in America, grew up as Americans, had a huge, they grew up as American kids when they had Indian parents. And there's a huge cultural issue. India and America are so much different. And there was a guy we stayed with, and this guy has like a couple of patents, and he's now like one of the dodgy people for heartfulness. Like he's really rich and smart, and he got really into Saj Marg. This is before Dodgy was, this is back when Chargy was the master of the system. And this guy, he had two kids, and they were both smart, but his son was addicted to computers. And his wife told my ex about how he was neglecting the shit out of his family and her, which was a weird thing for an Indian person wife to say, but it was really bad. And the guy was, even when we stayed at his house, like we stayed at his house because we were flying out of New York, and to go to India, and his son was addicted to computers and maybe had a sexual addiction or something like this, right? And his daughter came home, and the principal came over, and she was like, "These are," his son was about to go into college, and his daughter was, whatever, in high school, and his daughter just took scissors and chopped her hair off in ways that made her look like a crazy person. And there was this crisis was going on when we were there. And, this was a guy who was doing a lot of spiritual work. And these kids, we should have been influenced by this thing. But most of these kids ended up not doing Saj Marg. Even though they would come to these gatherings and they would put on plays and they looked happy about it and they looked like they were into it, they didn't do it. And I talked to one of these people, these parents, and they said, yeah, none of these kids are doing it. And we don't know why. Like, we don't know why our kids aren't doing it. And this is before my kids, this is like right before the divorce happened with my kids. And so, it's a disappointing type of situation because I thought these kids were so much better off being born into the system, but they're not into the stuff at all, right? And my kids, they dabbled in it for a little bit when they first started, but they really weren't into it, and they're not into the philosophy. And my kids are not into the truther stuff. In fact, they're rebellious against the truther stuff. And so we really can't have a conversation. And, we have nothing in common. And, there's no common ground. And they have, a negative opinion about me that I feel is unfair. And I just don't enjoy their company. Like there's nothing there between us. They used to come out, like we go out for my birthday dinner, and my son and my daughter would talk about serial killers and like shit that, and they were really anti-truther stuff. So my wife and I really couldn't talk about what we think about things. And they were closed to that perspective. And so it was just unpleasant. Like it was just this obligation, spending time. We went on vacation without our kids. And my wife and I realized how much better it was without them, which was sad. But it was the truth. Like I accepted it, right? But then I was thinking about my brother. And my brother, he has a strained relationship with his three sons. And, I was comparing, my effort as a dad, the homestead, the spiritual stuff, and even my kids aren't appreciative of it. When we had the flood in India, they were clearly better prepared for that kind of shit than any of the kids that were there. In fact, people complimented me on the kids and how prepared they were and how good they were doing during the flood. It was a crisis where we didn't have food and water. And we had food stored and things, so we managed. But we didn't have electricity and internet and working toilets and running water for a week. And my kids, they dealt with it. They were kind of thriving. They got things that they're not aware they got. And, they don't appreciate the Saj Marg stuff. They don't appreciate the truther stuff. They don't appreciate my efforts. But I made efforts. And I, endured. My ex cutting herself and threatening to commit suicide, and, which went to my daughter, started copying those behaviors. And eventually she would commit suicide. Like all that shit I went through, still trying to, give these guys a good life and have an intergenerational family farm, where my brother was a serial cheater. My brother had agoraphobia, so he could only leave the house and go in like a a 5 mile radius around his house. And he would have panic attacks other than that. He was a Vietnam vet, and he came back to Vietnam from Vietnam with a sexual addiction, and he was going to prostitutes all the time. And he got married, had a young, a kid, 6 years younger than me. So, he was, my brother was relatively young when he had his first son. And he was cheating on his wife regularly. Like, he wrote a book called The Gift, and where every year he would go out and get laid, right? Like, that was his birthday gift. Like, that was, he controlled his own, whatever it is. And so there was a time where he was hanging out with this French woman, and his wife and him worked for the Parks and Rec, and they did all these jobs. His wife was working the tennis courts, and they were in the same park, and he was hanging out with this woman who he was banging, right? Which, I had a higher opinion of him than that. Like, so I didn't suspect he was doing that, but I thought it was weird. He was hanging out with this woman and her kid, and he had all these different girlfriends. He later told me he was a bouncer for a while at a bar kind of near the Central Connecticut State University. That's not too far from his house, within his agoraphobic area. And he ended up picking up an 18-year-old girl. Like, he's in his 30s and has a couple of kids. And he was sleeping with this girl for like 2 years. And she was up in her dorm, and there was a fire alarm. And he convinced the girls to stay in the dorm with him. He made a whole big thing about it because he didn't want to go out and get caught by the cops as being a 30-year-old creep with an 18-year-old girl. I mean, it's fucked up. He's a real piece of shit. And he wanted these girls to risk their lives, this girl and her roommate, because he didn't want to go out and, because there's police there or whatever. And the girl eventually attempted suicide. And so, like, he's telling me these stories, and I'm like, my God, you're like a fucking total piece of shit, right? So he eventually leaves my sister-in-law, his wife, on my middle nephew's birthday. It's his son's birthday, and he leaves his wife for another woman. A wife who stood by him through all his agoraphobia stuff, and he was a serial cheater, and, just not a good, he was, I guess, in some ways an okay husband, but not a great one, certainly. And, anybody who's cheating on you that much and, bringing that possible diseases back into all this stuff, right? I have no respect for any of that thing. But my nephew really, like, hated him for that, because, it was his birthday. He was like 10 years old. Like, he was a little kid, and his dad just left. And the woman that he left his wife for was crazy as fuck. Nobody liked her, and she was a total nightmare. And which caused all kinds of problems, right? And my brother has a better relationship with his kids than I do with mine. And so, and I don't know if they call him on Father's Day, and, some of it's obligatory. My brother wanted my nephews to be great basketball player, and my oldest nephew, he would make my nephew, like, he coached him when he was like 6, 7 years old. And he rewarded my nephews when he made the other kid cry, using the killer instinct at a very young age, right? So, he did some fucked up shit, right? He was fucked up from Vietnam, and he had a lot of issues. He's a broken person, and my ex was really fucked up, and there's some fucked up genetics there, and my family was fucked up, and that filtered through to my kids. But I was like, how is it possible that his kids he has a better relationship with his kids? I don't want to get into some of the things that, issues with my kids, but some of it's fucking brutal. And just, I feel like they're very ungrateful and unaware of what I endured for them and what my goal was, regardless of it failing. And, I'm far from perfect, but, the reaction to me is far worse than, whatever it is. But like I said, I've accepted these things. It sucks, and, it didn't go the way that I had hoped and planned for. It was a failure. It's a tribute to the Sajmark system, and part of that is, I don't look for external validation. It's great if people love and appreciate you, and it's great if people value what you do, but you have to value what you do. Like you have to value your life, like what you're, you have to learn to, you have to, find a way to make something of yourself that you believe in. Like I believe in my spiritual path, I believe in the content I create here. Whether other people see it or not, whether it has value has nothing to do with me, right? That I'm working to make the world a better place in my, my own capacity. And I'm following, most importantly, I'm doing what I believe God wants me to do through my, ever growing connection to the divinity within me. And so external validation, although it's great in various ways, it pales in comparison. That's why I'm talking about all these holidays and these things. To you feeling good about what you're doing and following your soul's path and going forward and making progress as opposed to, failing and needing people to pick you up because you're a piece of shit that's doing the wrong thing, right? That you want validation because, you're invalidating yourself. Like you don't believe in what you're doing, you don't believe in the choices you're making. And so, you need thumbs up or likes on Facebook or people to tell you how great you are, even in a superficial capacity. I mean, this is, everything to do with the Trumpers and all the, the celebrity people and all these politicians. There was this video clip and I found it. I have it somewhere on my channel. I'm not going to find it here. But, I never really watched Oprah Winfrey's show. Like I watched like 5 of them maybe. And somehow I watched the Madonna one, and I didn't like Madonna, so I don't even know why I watched it. And I saw this clip. Maybe I was flipping for the channels. And she was talking about how, maybe she was a little bit older, and she was talking about how when she was young, she used to have all this, she needed the energy from the crowds, which, I call it a Madam Expiration Date because she was such a ghoul that she still needed that because people who are dead inside need lots of energy from the outside world. And these celebrities, I use the example of Will Smith and Madam Expiration Date, Madonna, as 2 perfect examples of people who need to be fed. And she said the words, I really needed to be fed. I really needed to receive. And she was talking about all her success when she was in her heyday. And, having millions of people love you or fake love, have, some weird fan relationship with you, cult-like relationship with you, is not nearly as good as having a relationship with the divinity within you and doing what you're supposed to do. Because when you're doing what's wrong in your life, when you're going against what you're supposed to be doing, you feel like a piece of shit because you're not serving the purpose that you're here for. You're not serving God's purpose. You're not doing what your soul planned for you to do. And so you're always going to feel incongruent. You're always going to feel lonely. You're always going to feel like you're not getting something. And you'll cover it up with rationalizations and, fake trophies, whether it's a degree or it's money or it's, a trophy wife or it's a, some way of saying, hey, look, I'm making it, I'm doing it. But deep down inside, you're failing. And so as bad as your life can get and as shitty as it is for me, to have the failure of my family, or it was for me, I've accepted as being something I had to go through and endure. And regardless if I feel I was treated, fairly by, or appreciated, really grateful for, that doesn't matter as much as doing the right thing and doing, what you think is the best. Even if you're, even just dabbling in that as opposed to willfully going against your soul's path. Anyways, this went a lot longer than I thought. Let me get into the other stuff here. Okay, so you've just listened to a voiceover I haven't done yet. I know what I'm going to say or where I'm going to go with it. In terms of Father's Day and holidays and birthdays and special days and things. And families. But I haven't the words have not come out and have not been recorded yet. But I'm going to start here instead, just so I wake up a little bit. And so this video was recommended to me.
Overnight, our world changed as we were sleeping. Israel launched one of the most sweeping military operations in recent memory, taking out over 100 sites all across Iran. They hit nuclear facilities. They killed top Iranian generals.
So the first piece to this is I realized there are people who get their news from Don Lemons. Right? We have people who, across the internet, people make their choices of who they get their news delivered from. Some people come here to me, and some people go to mainstream media. Some people go to other truthers, other people, alternative media, whatever it is. And some people go to Don Lemons. Some people think Don Lemons is the voice of reason and can explain the day's events to them. And this is by choice, right? They have all the other choices available to them, but they choose Don Lemons.
Generals, they assassinated scientists. They're calling it a declaration of war. Diplomats are scrambling, and Donald Trump, well, he called it excellent. I gave Iran chance, that's what he says, after chance to make a deal. I told them in the strongest of words to just do it. But no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done. I told them it would be much worse than anything they know, anticipated, or were told that the United States makes the best and most lethal military equipment anywhere in the world by far, and that Israel has a lot of it with much more to come. Overnight.
So, very incomplete statements. Don Lemons doesn't know how to make a short video. It's not all that hard, but he doesn't know how to do any of this stuff. He has hired people because he got $24 million to go away from CNN. They literally paid him $24 million. They fired him for basically cause, but gave him a $24 million payoff just to leave the network because he was that bad. And to fail that badly, on top of the millions that he made, then he tried to get $8 million a year out of Elon Musk, who figured out, oh my God, this guy's horrible. And so he went and did his own thing, and somehow he's still got a following because that's how bad things are. This is, I'm going to talk a lot about how bad things are. We're going to cover a little bit more about Israel. We're going to go to Trump's inauguration parade, these bogus protests, and then I got a bunch of interesting Instagram things that people sent me to get to today. Today is the 15th of June. We're halfway through June already. But people get their news from Don Lemons. That's just something everyone should think about. They have all these choices, and they think Don Lemons is somebody that is a reliable person to tell them about what's going on in the world. So YouTube also recommended this video clip this morning.
I'll tell you what, I'm also back on my lib shit.
What's up?
I watched just a video today of, it was at the UFC when Trump's cabinet was there, and they do that thing where the camera gets in front of you. Every single one of them was like,
Trump's cab.
all the bros. It genuinely pissed me off.
They're drinking that Zucker juice, bro.
Makes me wanna-
Why are they all the bros now? They're the bros now.
They're all acting bros out.
They are.
So this is disturbing as well, and I'll wait till you see the pictures, but just the fact they went to the UFC. They got little clips here. They're going to show you all these guys trying to be cool. Trump's cabinet. But you know what? I talked about the whole WWE assassination attempt. So this is, just low vibrational shit. But when you understand what boxing is and what UFC, sports is one thing. And sports is can be, sports, we all played sports, right? But watch paying two guys to beat the shit out of each other. Just think about in terms of the gladiator days and the days of the Romans and the Christians, all that kind of shit, right? Slaves, forcing slaves to fight and, cockfights and pit bull fights. People think it's abhorrent to take two pit bulls and have them eat each other, right? Try to kill each other, or two roosters and try to kill each other. And these, these boxing matches and UFC matches are even worse, are paying to watch two guys just do damage and all these things. There's a Joe Rogan, one of his interviews, he was talking to, I think it was Mark Zuckerberg, maybe somebody, about what it's like in the locker room after these fights, and these guys are incoherent. Sometimes they're they don't know who you are, their faces are swollen, and they're, they're they were doing physical damage. these you get like these cauliflower ears and stuff, and I mean, all this stuff with CTE. I mean, even to the extent of football being so violent and so brutal. But this is old gladiator shit. And for them to all be celebrating this when they're, in charge of war. Like this is, I think they're just going because Trump went. But, and, Dana White showed up at his inauguration. There's that connection. But Trump, like to have it's like having a bloodlust, all this violence you see in TV shows and movies and stuff. And, we're very violent. We really put a lot of emphasis on violence. And to have the cabinet be up there, and then they're so flippant about it here.
Are on T.
You can't be a Repub after you see this.
Really? Yeah, that's tough.
Made that E. These are the bros. Mark Ingram being funny.
Sick.
Deion Dawkins, beast.
Yeah.
Licks his wife's face.
Nice.
Beast.
Awesome.
Now, RFK keeps it classy.
He brought his wife, just
Yeah, he
This is how a
does.
politician should do it.
after a guy caught, fucking cheating with some reporter. Remember that?
Yeah, true.
Here's the head of the FBI.
Cash Patel. Gabs. Hanglers. Who's that bull?
Marco Rubio.
Rubio. That's Rubio. He's definitely allegedly.
They're all, giving the side. They're all, just bad.
On T.
I'll tell you what,
So there's that. They're all doing doing that surfer thing with Tulsi Gabbard, all this, But just the fact they're there, Trump's there and they're all there, and it's like some kind of, it's just icky. It's so fucking icky. It's so idiocracy and low consciousness, right?
Alex Hogan joins us now from the outskirts of Tel Aviv. Alex?
Hi, good morning. I'm in Bat Yam, which is a suburb of Tel Aviv, where there has been widespread damage after Iran's overnight attack. So you can see the tall building behind
Okay, so let me just watch a little bit more of this.
me. That one took a direct hit from one of Iran's missiles, but that's not it. All of the surrounding homes in this area, the glass of the windows, the doors, the roofs have all been ripped off because of those shock
Watch her try to be like she's trying to her inflection. The doors and the hey and the boo and the how and the who and the he.
from one of Iran's missiles, but that's not it. All of the surrounding homes in this area, the glass of the windows, the doors, the roofs have all been ripped off because of those shockwaves. Right now, rescue teams and police officers are searching through the area, combing through the rubble and going door to door, trying to find residents.
So the first thing is that Israel's under the gun right now. I'd said this, and one of my viewers reminded me that I said this, that Israel's got to go for it right now because they're, all alone in the world other than America, surrounded by enemies, and they have a lot of military capability, and they have the backing of the U.S. military, and so they have to go for theirs right now, right? But going for theirs is doing a genocide in Gaza and doing another genocide in the West Bank, and then assassinating the president in Syria, and now going to war with Iran, because this is now war. And this is how they're treating their own people. Because, your enemies are one thing, but by launching these strikes to Iran, right? Iran has a lot of missiles and bombs and stuff they haven't, they have a lot of this stuff from Russia. They have a lot of military equipment and things like this. They have a very big military. And so they did the strike, and then they tell everybody, get to your basements because there's could be, even with these missiles that the Iron Dome thing, the missiles have to land somewhere. And so Iran shoots these things up, and again, they had Jordan help them, which is kind of fucked up, right? Because that's a Muslim country. Shot down some of Iranian missiles, but they do an act of war against Iran, a preemptive strike against their nuclear program. And, Iran now is probably hell-bent on finishing a nuclear weapon And they could easily drop that on Israel because they're so close and all these things, right? And so, they have to tell their citizens, there's going to be missiles and bombs coming in. Like they're exposing their citizens to this. That Iron Dome thing is, it's just these various missile type of technology where they can shoot down missiles and drones and other things like that. But they're going to run out of stuff, and it's going to be on us to refill all their stockpiles. Like Trump is saying, they have an Iron Dome, but we don't have one in America. Like we have all this technology, and we've given it to them, but it's a smaller country, a really small country, but still. And like they're subjecting their citizens to this. They know there's going to be casualties, and they're saying, "Fuck it, we don't care." I mean, they're already, have whatever's going on in the Gaza Strip and these other places. And it's all predicated on America, which I'll get into in a moment here.
Who are missing. This as all of these homes for the blocks to come will need to either be inspected, which could take years, or they are uninhabitable. And residents tell me that they will be moved to a school for now for temporary shelter. 10 people are dead in Israel and more than 200 are wounded after Iran launched dozens of new missiles overnight. There are more questions here on the ground of how some of these missiles were able to get past Israel's defensive capabilities and make direct impact on homes, something that we had not seen in the recent two conflicts with Iran. And today, Israel is increasing efforts to hit Iran's energy industry and defensive ministry headquarters. In a rare move, the IDF today in Farsi is calling on all residents living near reactors in Iran to evacuate. President Donald Trump says that the U.S. had nothing to do with Israel's strikes last night.
So I want to get to the thing about Trump saying he had nothing to do with it. But first of all, they're bombing nuclear sites where they have like nuclear power plants. And so that's going to cause fallout. Like that, you can't just bomb that shit and disappear it. And so there's going to be radioactive fallout like this, whatever that is. But I don't know what they won't tell you the damage that's being done here. Donald Trump saying America has nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with it, especially his administration. Because Israel can't do anything without America's backing and America's weapons. And so, like I said, they know America's going down. So this is their last chance to grab enough resources and cripple their border enemies enough. And they need America to go in and fight Iran, which means Russia's going to get in because they have an alliance with Iran. Russia had already sort of backed Syria. They have less of an alliance. Remember, Russia stopped that war with Syria, the invasion under Obama. And so, this is, they're pushing for World War III. There was this meme. Let me see if I can bring this up here. It took me a while to find this. I don't know who sent this to me, but I didn't put it up on my toolbar. So I scrolled through Facebook, couldn't find it, and went through my Instagram messages and things my wife sent me, and just, I don't know. But I think somebody sent me this, or I saw it on Facebook or something. And to drag the U.S. into war with Iran, you will. And this is who wants to do a false flag. Attack U.S. ship, assassinate U.S. official, attack U.S. base, conduct something on U.S. soil. Can't read that word. It's not very clear. It says conduct terrorism on U.S. soil. And so, this is, my wife actually mentioned this to me, that people are talking about this somewhere on Reddit or somewhere, that Iran needs to, Netanyahu needs to draw America into war with Iran. Assassination attempt on Trump would be a big one because they already kind of made that claim before. Iran now is saying, according to the mainstream media, that they're holding America accountable. And it would be incredibly stupid for Iran to do anything that would provoke Trump to back Israel in a war. And that would bring Russia into it. And, of course, Israel has nuclear weapons. What if they drop a bomb? I mean, whatever happens here, it's, this is what's up, right? I've showed you this thing time and time again here. Let me see if this is it here. This is, greater Israel from the Bible. So anybody who's a Zionist who believes God promised Israel to the Jews, this is Israel right here. This is Israel right here. And then all this other area is also considered Israel. This was the Israel of the Bible. And so you would immediately be a superpower economically, and then you could increase your military, because that's the big thing that they do. They're a very militaristic country. Every person that lives there has to be in the military. So if they were able to occupy these lands and get all the resources, I mean, just God itself has all that oil and natural gas off the shore. And so to have all that, energy, oil and things here, and these access to these ports and whatever, Israel would be a superpower, especially if America goes down. But they have a limited time before America collapses, and so they have to get it out of America everything that they can. And that would be World War III, and America taking down Iran, and then these other countries falling along with it. I mean, there would be, whatever. If there's any real sense of grabbing all this land, it's got to be before America falls. So let's go back here.
In a rare move, the IDF today in Farsi is calling on all residents living near reactors in Iran to evacuate. President Donald Trump says that the U.S. had nothing to do with Israel's strikes last night, but he warned, quote, if we are attacked in any way, shape or form by Iran, the full strength and might of the U.S. armed forces will come down on you at levels never seen before. Now,
okay, so Russia has an alliance with Trump's fucking, one time, my dad was always getting screwed over. And I remember going into a gas station or garage, and my dad said to them, something's going on outside with my dog, and said, I knew you guys are going to try to screw me over. My brother and I used to joke about shit like that, right? Because he's like, I know you guys are going to try to screw me over, but I'm on to you, and he had no idea, they just, whatever. And so Trump is like that. When you talk with no real, no one respects him. And I mean, he's, in charge of the American military, but he doesn't understand what this will happen. And, what will happen when Israel does a false flag here. Because it would be stupid for Iran to attack America. I don't know who would win a one-on-one war with them in Israel, but they're not going to win a war with America. And then Russia comes in, and then you have World War III, and it centers around those countries. Both those countries would be fucked, right? If Russia comes in, I mean, it would take almost nothing to bomb the shit out of a small country like Israel and destabilize the shit out of it. And I don't know Iran has what kind of capabilities they have. But if America gets involved, and then him saying this, this is him mobilizing whatever he has to mobilize. I mean, if he's going to drop a nuclear bomb in Iran, the radioactive spill out, the fucking, you can't do that. That would be not a good thing. And there's lots of innocent people there, all that stuff, right? We fucked them over before. I mean, look at him. Look at this fucking guy. Look at him. He's not a tough guy, right? And this isn't truth. And so, he's just a moron. I'm saying these things. And it's, it would definitely be World War III and all the things, China, I mean, we're spread thin and Israel's spread thin, right? And Israel doesn't have a lot of support other than America. So, this would be, it would be isolating. It would be even more isolating than it is now.
Now, back here live in Bat Yam, the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is currently here. He's visiting this site. Brett Baer will conduct an interview with him, which will air at noon, 12 p.m. Eastern time later today. You can catch
all right. So that's fucking must-see TV. Anyways, we're that much closer to nuclear war. Okay, so I I watched a little bit of Fox News while I was eating breakfast, and this is what came up. It's kind of fucking brutal. I mean, just, well, let's go to it here.
The people in Tel Aviv right now, according to him, kind of stone-faced and understanding.
Yeah, there is no panic. I mean, yesterday I went for a walk on the beach and the boardwalk was packed and people were playing volleyball and even swimming in the sea. And Israelis don't panic for two reasons. One, we know that if there is a siren, we're going to get, here I see everyone leaving, so we must have just received an alert that the sirens are over. Israelis know that before a siren, we'll get an advance warning as much as half an hour before telling us to seek shelter, because Israel sees when the Iranian regime is about to fire missiles, so they know there's no need to panic. You'll have plenty of time to find shelter. But also, this is just something that comes with experience. We have had weeks where the Houthis in Yemen will fire a missile at Israel basically every single night, waking the whole country up. So it's tragic that Israelis are used to this, but this is 20 months into a 7-front war, and after many more years of rocket fire from Hezbollah and Hamas, and Israelis have become used to the unthinkable, but we absolutely can't let anyone think that this reality is normal.
It's totally normal, right? It's historically, this is the whole claim for a need for a safe place where Israel can defend itself, right? And so every politician, American politician, will say these words: I will always support Israel's right to defend itself. That's a tagline they have to say. They have to sign this pledge. They get pressure from these lobbyists, these lobbying groups. So Cynthia McKinney, one of the rare politicians, she confronted Donald Rumsfeld about the $9 billion, whatever it was, amount of money that disappeared from the Pentagon budget the day before 9/11, right? And so she was one of the few people that called that out. And she said that she was pressured to sign this pledge, to say those words, to vow to support Israel. And she didn't do it, and the Israeli lobby dumped $1 million into her opponent's campaign, and she lost her seat. And so all these American politicians will say those words: I fully support Israel's right to defend itself. Because the idea is that the Jews have been persecuted all over the world, right? And the Holocaust being the big one, and then this is the official story, that everywhere they've gone, they've been mistreated, and they are, in other people's country where they're an ethnic minority. And sometimes there's genocide, sometimes there's ethnic cleansing, sometimes there's just prejudice. But wherever they are, they are targeted. And there's anti-Semitism. That's the other thing. There's a hatred for Jewish people. And that's even a wrong term, because being a Semitic person is more than just being Jewish. But that's another thing. But, they've been persecuted. And, I mean, you can go historically through this, and this is a claim they make, that wherever they go, they're meant to feel unwelcome, and they're forced out of their particular situation, right? And so they needed a homeland that they could defend, that they could call their own, where they could live free and people didn't hate on them, and it was a Jewish state, right? Which would be a legitimate claim, right? That's something that they wanted, but it was somebody else's land. The Palestinian people, it was a place called Palestine, and people from Israel had left, the Jews had left that area. And so, it was a bigger piece of land than just Palestine too. I show you the map of Greater Israel, right? So the other piece to this is, if you read the Old Testament, God is like, go destroy this group of people, go destroy that group of people, right? Go destroy the Canaanites, go destroy the Philistines, right? When King David wanted to marry the king's daughter, he was told that he had to bring back 100, I think, Philistine foreskins. And David was a go-getter, so he brought 200. It's a brutal, bloodthirsty book where God is ordering Israelites to destroy the other various groups all the time. Kill these people, take this wall down, fuck these people over, destroy these people. I mean, God's a vengeful prick in the book, or it's not really God. I've talked about this in the past. And, Yahweh used to be a war cry. And there were, they were brutal warriors in that area. So there's all those things that go with it. So, to say that these group of people are just victims when we see how they're treating the Palestinians and some of the other things that they've done as a group of people or individuals of that Jewish individuals, right? To condemn a whole group of people for the actions of few is always a problem. But, they had these aggressive wars where they were the aggressor, and they've pissed off all their neighbors. Israel has, and they've used America to bully these other countries, right? And so, these individual people have to live like this because of that. All these, some of these, people who are good people, innocent people, have to live with fucking bomb shelters. Here, he's going to talk about this here.
And have to run for shelter because that's not normal.
If you can you tell us where specifically you are in Tel Aviv, or are you in the central part of Tel Aviv? Are you near the beach now, or are you in the outskirts, kind of?
I am in my apartment building in central Tel Aviv. New buildings in Israel built since 1992 have their own bomb shelters in each apartment. It's crazy. If you go around with a realtor to rent an apartment and they say, your house has a bomb shelter, that's a big bonus, and you sign that rental contract straight away. Older buildings have a bomb shelter in the basement, like this one, and some buildings don't have a bomb shelter at all, and then people have to go to public bomb shelters. You can see the information online. Tel Aviv, the whole country is.
So I want to comment about this. There's lots of people in the truth community, lots of Americans who blame Jews for everything, and that the whole thing. And there's the Christian stuff about, they talk about how the crucifixion is God sacrificing his only son. What God would do that to his son? What God would fucking do that to his son? Like, think about it. What fucking God would have his son be crucified for a bunch of fucking... I mean, look at the fucking people around you. Would you crucify your own son to save all these sinners from people from sin and damnation? You don't want these motherfuckers to suffer for their fucking stupidity, all the people in the world? I mean, even if you're not vindictive, you don't think they should suffer their consequences? That God doesn't believe that all these low-life motherfuckers should suffer for their consequences because they were born sinners? Why were they born sinners, God? What the fuck's wrong with you that you would make these people everyone be born a sinner? It's fucking, it's blasphemy. It isn't God's son. We're all children of God, and God didn't do that to Jesus. But it's the selling point, where guilt and being a martyr and all that shit, and say, stop being a prick. Jesus died for your sins, you fucking selfish piece of shit. Don't you know Jesus died for your sins? Look at what his dad did to him. Like, it's fucking bullshit, right? But making the crucifixion the centerpiece, then everybody who brought about the crucifixion was doing God's work. They should be all absolved. They should be saints because they did what Jesus and God wanted them to do, which was to crucify him. And yet there is this hatred towards Jewish people because of Judas, right? This idea of Judas, this whole thing. There's some legitimate stuff out there about that, right? But it isn't like the Jewish people have done nothing from their side to provoke the people in that region, which they have. What they're doing in Gaza right now is provoking people. And, this idea that we have a right, we're victims, and we have a right to defend ourselves. But look at the prick move. So Netanyahu has called Donald Trump the greatest friend we've ever had in the White House, right? And Netanyahu's, relationship with Donald Trump is strained. And he decided to attack Iran on Donald Trump's fucking birthday when he's about to have this military celebration that's costing the American taxpayer $60 million, where there's all these protests. We're going to get into the protests in a moment. And what's going on with Israel and Iran and the protests are far more interesting and are more of a story than Donald Trump's bullshit military parade. And so Netanyahu just took a big, giant fucking dump on the greatest friend to Israel that they've ever had in the White House. And, they didn't ask him permission. Donald Trump said he didn't know anything about it. And, will possibly be getting us into World War III. And it's a big fuck you to Trump. Trump loves more than anything else. He loves attention. And that's why he was having this parade. and he's going to get none of it. Netanyahu fucked him out of his own, attention and shit all over his big thing, his big day, right? And so that's how you treat your fucking friends. I mean, if they are any way responsible or involved in some of these other false flag events, like the big event in September, like some of these other things where there seems to be a lot of evidence that Israel was actually part of that, and so that's how you treat your friends. The reason that you can have this, these bomb shelters is because of this Iron Dome. I mean, you're forcing your citizens to live like this, and you've established a country by means that were completely shitty, like the UN imposing its will and creating Israel out of Palestine, and then grabbing all of the Palestinian lands and pushing that. You've created enemies and people that hate you all around the world for your actions, and you can justify it by saying we're just defending ourselves, but those are acts of aggression. Sinking the USS Liberty. Ask those soldiers how they feel about it, right? Those now, dead soldiers from World War II, or that war, or whatever it is. They're just still alive because it was in the 60s. But, this is, there's a reason for the hatred that you're generating. There's been a 3,000-year-old beef between the Muslims and the Jews, and then whatever's happened with the Christians and the Jews, and some of them are backing them, some of them aren't. But there's real shit that's happened here, right? Like there's no victims here. This is all, this is taking actions that generate a response.
Our special coverage continues as we watch the military parade for the Army anniversary in Washington and ongoing No King's Day protests that were basically aligned and choreographed as a response by protesters to Donald Trump's celebration.
I don't know what that fucking noise is. I'm getting all these weird, I don't know if they're just putting up shitty content or it's coming from my computer. But, there's often background noises, or there's blips, or there's glitching out. And again, I hope it's not my computer, because I don't think it happens when I'm not watching these news clips. But whatever.
Of military force here. Jacob Soboroff has been reporting for us out of Los Angeles and has more on that spot near the federal building where so much has happened over the course of the week. Jacob?
Ari, tactical officers from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department have moved in.
They're tactical.
Both in on the back of these pickup trucks, and they've got tactical vehicles and on horseback as well. As the horses start to make their way in here, actually, JB, let's go this way so we can show them. It looks as though they're establishing perhaps a line here, because
again, all old people.
People are in the street in front.
What the hell is that? Oh, she's got
of the federal building. And I don't know if the plan is to declare an unlawful assembly or to move people out, but I'm going to see if we can just get into a position that gives us an idea of what's going on here. If you look...
Looks kind of like martial law. It looks kind of fucking martial law-y.
If you look... Come on down, JB. If you look down the road here, you can see many vehicles from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and the California Highway Patrol. That's a tactical officer from the Highway Patrol. These are officers obviously dressed in their tactical gear for the LA County Sheriff's Department. The Los Angeles Police Department has formed a line on the other side of the street. And what they've done is where we were before, where the Marines are stationed in front of the federal building. They have essentially formed a line.
Okay, so I covered this yesterday. A bunch of bogus protests. And there's, stuff going on in D.C. and these rest of these protests, right? And they're not covering Trump at all, right? There's just this stuff here.
Whoa. Let's go.
Oh, there's a thing here.
Here, may I show your sign, ma'am? Can I? Your sign says...
We are not criminals.
Whoa.
Wait, you're not criminals? Okay. And now that I see this sign, I know you're... Thanks. I was wondering, are you guys criminals or not? But now I know you're not, because fucking you showed me that sign.
Whoa, let's go.
Peaceful protest. We're not doing nothing wrong.
Whoa.
We have the freedom.
Whoa.
Speech.
Go.
This guy's gas mask on.
You have to be careful, okay? You take care of yourself. So you can see, whoa, they're messing with the horses. Guys, let's go.
Don't mess with the horses.
Go. Let's back up here. Obviously, people are unhappy, Ari. People don't want to see horses trampling. Let's go, guys. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Let's go, let's go. Hey, Ari, we're okay. We're going to keep going. Stay with us if you can. JB, want to move a little faster back. They're pushing people with horses, which obviously gets people freaked.
They're pushing people with horses.
Jacob, you're on camera, but do what you need to do.
Ahead,
You're on camera, but take your time and space.
Whoa. Let's go, let's go. Oh, shit. Let's go. Whoa. We're good, Ari. We're good, Ari. We're good. We're good. We're good. Keep going. We're good.
Okay, you're not there to tell people what to do, bro. You're there to cover it. Come on, you guys, let's go.
We're good. Whoa, those are the flashbangs. Let's go, let's go. Ari, obviously they're trying to disperse the crowd here. We're doing fine. And this is crowd control tactics by the Sheriff's Department, the Highway Patrol, LAPD. It's an effort to move people out of that area by the federal building. And obviously it's been pretty effective to get people off of that bridge there on Los Angeles Street. Let's give you the vantage point from over here.
Look at these people. Look at how happy this guy.
Obviously, it's been pretty effective to get people
What's
off
this
of that
guy
bridge
here?
there on Los Angeles Street. Let's give you the vantage point from over
Look at
here.
this guy. Look at it. These guys just flashing their fucking gang signs or whatever the fuck it is. You know, like they're all, hey, look at me. Hey, I would be on TV. I mean, just
While we kept
like
our breath,
these
you can see,
protesters
Ari,
fucking silly.
This is the 101 freeway. That's the federal building where we were talking to you from earlier. We're good, buddy. And the people that were in front of the federal building have now moved further up to that line with the Highway Patrol and the LAPD.
All right, just fucking stupid. But that's the big story, the second big story. Israel and Iran, you know, pushing for World War III. And, you know, this idea that in the truth community that Netanyahu and Israel are going to produce a false flag to blame it on Israel, to blame it on Iran and America. And Trump is going to go into war with Iran. You know, also Trump was in negotiating with Iran, and they just said, fuck it, we're going to do this. And I'm sure, like, you know, they didn't ask him permission. And they just have no respect for the guy. So even Fox News covered now anti-Trump rioters clashing with police segues into the lesser important story here.
And while California is in chaos, the big story tonight was the historic day in Washington, D.C.
So if it's the big story, why didn't you lead with it? Why are you leading with this chaos in California and segueing into the lesser story? The big story tonight is the one that's not our top story, but it's the big one. It's definitely bigger than the other three stories that we had before it, that we covered at the beginning of the hour, that we cover all our top stories. But this is the big story because it's really big.
Hundreds of thousands of people turned out to celebrate the Army's 250th anniversary parade. It was the first large-scale military parade since the end of the Gulf War in 1991. The event showcased everything the Army has to offer, from the helicopter flyovers
to these propeller planes.
paratroopers, and of course, all of our biggest and boldest weapons. More than 6,000 soldiers joining in on the fun. In the crowd,
The fun. It sounds like fucking a blast.
was treated to a patriotic and amazing fireworks display to wrap up the evening. President Trump had a front row seat, and since it was also his birthday,
Just crazy. He had a fucking military parade with fireworks on his birthday. It's not like the guy's going to spend government money on himself, like getting a fucking plane that cost $500 million to refurbish and $400 million gift from some foreign country that he's going to get for himself. It's not like he would do shit like that, and he would use $60 million to have a parade on his fucking birthday that gets shit all over by his closest ally in Netanyahu. It's like none of that shit would ever happen.
he received a very special gift, an American flag hand-delivered by the Army's Golden Knights parachute team, and the importance of this parade wasn't lost on the president.
And tonight we affirm with unwavering certainty that in the years ahead and in every generation hence, whenever duty calls and whatever danger comes, the American soldier will be there.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey.
Oh, that was fucking pathetic. I have a longer version here. So Fox News covered this whole fucking thing here for 3 hours, right?
States Army from the hallowed ground of
Oh, they're singing happy birthday to him. Oh, it's pathetic.
of the United States, Donald J. Trump and First Lady Melania Trump.
You know, he's limp dicking it. Like, he's losing all sense of credibility. You know, there's some people that are going to like this parade, but, you know, he came in with Elon Musk and this idea, and Elon Musk saying that we're going to be in debt. You know, we're just going to be, all we can do is pay off the interest. You're not, I mean, just, there won't be any budget for anything else but interest, you know, and that's where we're headed, which we already fucked, but Elon Musk was, you know, verbalizing something many of us knew for years. It's already happened. We're bankrupt. We're insolvent. And so, you know, this is a slap in the face. This is unnecessary expenditure. Also, $500 million for a fucking plane that's going to be his personal plane. That's a gift. That's a conflict of interest. And so, like, he's turned into an absolute joke, right? Like somebody that has no principles and no fucking sense of shame and embarrassment. Fight, fight, fight. Remember when they fake shot me? When I had this fucking ketchup in my ear? Fight, fight, fight. Like, remember I got wounded? Why didn't he get a Purple Heart for that? He's the commander-in-chief. Right? He said that we're in a war zone. Fight, fight, fight. This is so pathetic. He's just so limp-dicked, right? He's denutted himself. Hey to you. Him and Hegseth. There they are. They're waiting. This goes on.
On their feet was the M918, 1918 French crew. A group like this.
They're not showing the other. They just want this off Trump. They're focused on Trump the entire time. Not one time are they going to the equipment. It's all Trump.
Band and the oldest unit at West Point. This is the United States Military Academy Band, ladies and gentlemen. West Point Band traces its history.
Whoa.
Drummer and fifer appointed by George Washington.
It's a fifers. They got fifers in there. Fucking fifers in there.
For centuries, this band evolved into one of the most capable and versatile performing groups in the world.
Are they fifers? Where's the fifers? Here he is saluting somebody. No one else is saluting. Why is he the one saluting? Why isn't he saluting these army guys? It looks like a fucking total tool.
Please welcome country music sensation and proud supporter of our troops, Warren Zeiner.
The Zeiner is there? They got fucking Zeiner?
The last thing standing between the main event, and that is a dangerous place to be with a lot of soldiers in the audience. So
Boom.
Battle of the Bulge.
You're fighting the Battle of the Bulge, bro.
He proclaimed they've got us surrounded again, the poor bastards. This is the fight.
Boom. He's just a little leprechaun. Give him a salute. Boom. He's got a special flag. Boom. That's excellent. Why didn't they show the fucking military shit? They're doing the fireworks. He's leaving during the fireworks. He's getting out of there. He's trying to beat the traffic. He's trying to beat the traffic before the fire, you know, he's getting out there before the fireworks. Oh my God, this was pathetic. and their coverage was horrible. This is Fox News. They're the only ones who covered it, and they didn't show you what was going on. They just focused on Trump the whole time. Oh, what a horrible thing. What a fucking embarrassment. The guy, it's just got totally denuded. The guy just can't get out of his own way, right? He's imploding.
So after just 3 fights in the UFC, Kayla Harrison is the new women's bantamweight champion, defeating opponent Juliana Pineda in a second-round submission on Saturday night. She celebrated her first title victory with President Trump and even
gave him a big hug.
Gave him her championship belt.
Boom.
The new champion, Kayla Harrison, joins us now with her reaction. Hey, Kayla, how you doing? Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm good. How are you?
Good.
How are you? How are you over there? How are you?
You totally crushed it. I was watching one of your photos of you cutting weight. How difficult was that to go into this fight?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's definitely part of the job that most fighters don't enjoy, including myself.
All right, so Jesus Christ. Like, it's become a fucking joke. I mean, this is idiocracy just playing out. The WWE stuff, all that stuff, big part of it. UFC stuff here. Bullshit parades. Getting fucking gifts of luxury planes. Like, it's just a banana republic, right? This is, you know, and nobody gives a shit. I mean, the Democrats are loving it because Trump is burying the Republican Party, and they're just letting them do it, and, you know, they don't have anything else, right? That's the other thing about that comment the person said covering Trump. The Democrats are so fucked. Like, the only thing they have is Trump is an absolute disaster. Like, that's all they've ever had, but now more than ever after that Kamala Harris, Joe Biden disaster, they're in disarray. And the only thing that's saving them is Trump's going to suck so bad, they're the only alternative. You know, it's like you're in the middle of a fucking ocean, and there's a shitty boat with a bunch of shitty people like Greta Thunberg and a bunch of irritating pieces of shit you don't want any part of. And the other boat has cannibals on it, right? So you're like, fuck, I guess it's Greta Thunberg. You know, like, so, you know, you're on a life raft and you have 2 options to be rescued. And neither one can really rescue, but, you know, one's really annoying and the other one is like fucking cannibals. Okay, so I was going to put in something about Marjorie Taylor Greene buying Palantir stock, but that turned out to be not true. Disney faked animal suicide and no one questioned it. In 1958, Disney released White Wilderness. It showed lemmings running off a cliff. The lemmings blindly follow the group even to death. The world believed it. Schools showed it, but none of it was real. Lemmings don't live near cliffs. They don't migrate, and they don't kill themselves. Disney brought the lemmings from Inuit kids, shipped them hundreds of miles, put them on a spinning platform, then pushed them off of a cliff into the water. They killed animals to fake a message and won an Oscar for it. Why? In Cold War America, obedience was everything, and Disney was trusted in every home. The message was simple: follow the group, stay in line, or die alone. It wasn't science, it was control. Okay, so this is an intern that is responsible for a lot of the content that comes out of Hilaria and Alec Baldwin shitting out of their, you know, whatever they're doing now. The title of this video was Brain Rot. Someone took her video where she's, you know, bragging about her. Well, let's just watch it here.
That's me, Julia, Respective Collective's new intern. It's me with Hilaria and Alec Baldwin, you know, celebrity couple.
Hilaria!
From the Baldwins, Boss Baby, Cat in the Hat, and a million other awesome things. And that was my second day working. As an intern, I have to make sure the office day starts right and turn on the big R in the salt lamp. Not really sure what happens if I don't do this, but I was told it's important. Skylar did her daily MBA training and went really well.
Boom, Skylar.
Chris gave it.
Skylar sucks. Get out of there, Skylar.
To try and did even better. Then he actually did better, and Skylar realized she had some competition. We headed over to the Baldwins and did some content with Hilaria. Did some BTS for some videos, and the video I took.
There she is doing her bullshit.
Some BTS for some videos.
They're doing her like fucking Spanish
in
dancing.
the video I took, plus the BTS got posted. Then I got to film the content idea I came up with, and it ended up doing pretty well.
She did that right there. She came up with this content. The thing's in my kitchen. She came up with an idea of Hilaria talking about what's in her kitchen with her brain that's half Spanish, half English, and that she's half American, and that she speaks, she's dyslexic and whatever else she has, and she has PTSD, and that makes her speak Spanish with an accent, even though she has none, legitimately.
Pretty well. Alec came and we got to film some super fun clips with the both of them, even got some acting lessons. Got to head over and be a part of a Don Lennon content shoot.
Wait, Don Lemon? You got to be on Don Lemon's?
Day, I caught Skylar red-handed and scheduled some posts for the LinkedIn. Then Tamir came into the office and shot some content, made sure to keep up with the Social Notion calendar and keep posting some jiffies. Got to shoot and
Jiffies, they got jiffies.
edit some fun brain rot content. Go check out that video for the full experience.
Fun brain rot content, so good. Good for her. Like they got some fucking 17-year-old intern that doesn't know Alex's two quality movies, Hunt for Red October and Glengarry and Glen Ross, but he was in Baby Boss and a bunch of other awesome shit. And now he's married to Ilaria. His life has gone to shit.
This is our cold water pressure in the kitchen. This is where I fill up water for storage. Those are the things we have to fill up to flush the toilets.
So you can see the sediment from the data center. Wow, and that's just from the water coming out of your faucet.
Yeah. And this is what's in all the pipes.
Just the well itself is probably $20,000, and that's not counting any of the
all
faucets.
The replacement of the fixtures and faucets and toilets and the lines that come underneath the house. It's overwhelming because you really feel like you are up against this huge wall that you can't penetrate. There's nothing that you can do, and they don't care.
I'm here in Mansfield, Georgia, driving by Meta's new 2 million square foot data center facility. Facilities like this are being used to power things like ChatGPT and other AI tools that are becoming integrated into our daily life.
Data centers, it's going to be a very hot item.
This entire supercomputer is built to power Grok.
We see data centers as the most exciting asset class.
Meta is building a 2 gigawatt plus data center that is so large it would cover a significant part of Manhattan.
But data centers come with big costs, from light and noise pollution to the environmental impacts, to the potential rising costs of energy bills. These facilities put extraordinary demand on the power grid and require entirely new infrastructure. Beverly and Jeff Morris bought their home an hour's drive from downtown Atlanta in 2016, but their roots in the community run much deeper.
Being in the country has always just been my peace and my therapy.
So these things are a nightmare, which we already know about. It takes massive amount of electricity. You know, this stuff that these AI is doing. Now, how many of you guys are using AI regularly? You know, I use it maybe 15 to 20 minutes a day over multiple searches. Like I search shit on my phone. It makes things a lot easier. You know, you can fact check things a lot easier because it combs the internet. Of course, it's not going to give you a truther perspective. But if anything that's you know, someone sent me a Marjorie Taylor Greene meme on Facebook, on Instagram. It said that she purchased stock from Palantir right before there was a massive contract that was given to them, and she made 89% on her investment. And ChatGPT could only find that she lost money on stock earlier. So you know, she bought some in January. I don't know. The price went down. So I don't know. You know, I believe ChatGPT more than just random shit you find on the internet. But, you know, it is whatever it is, right? But in terms of my usage, it's maybe 20 minutes. But I could see where you could use it constantly, and more people are going to start using it. And then all the electricity it needs to do that. I mean, these are super fast turnarounds in terms of instantaneous processing of large amounts of data and synthesizing it and giving or doing research and giving, you know, coherent answers. And so, you know, it's going to, and those are just some of the basic usages. Like there's another video I'm going to show you here, some of the other usages. But there's going to be no, there's going to be no electricity for people, right? Like, I mean, they're going to have to build these massive power plants, and it's always going to be behind. They're never going to catch up to the power demands. Even if they depopulate and use your energy for the AI, it's still not going to be enough.
What's up, heads? I'm the welder on this site, and nobody tells me what to do. I do what I want, and they pay me what I want. I'm the safety guy on this site, and I'm about to go write up the welder for not having his safety glasses on.
I'm the iron worker, and if anybody wants to talk to me, they're gonna have to come up here, but they're all a bunch of babies.
Hey guys, I'm the electrician. You think I'm gonna clean this up? What's a broom?
Howdy, y'all. I'm the operator, but you can call me Big Daddy. Big Daddy just gonna be scrolling through his Explore page.
What's up, head?
So this is just another AI video that people sent me. And, the quality of these people, they look like real people. And, the laughing and stuff, I mean, that's whatever that is. But, it's here. Like, we're barely scratching the surface of, and that's what I said about the electricity. When people start figuring out what it can do and it starts doing more and more of everything, and they realize that they underestimated the amount of electricity they needed. I mean, it's just going to be what it is. It's a fucking, this is like a science fiction horror movie just waiting to happen, right? Regardless of, like I said, it's probably worse to have AI as your friend than your enemy. And so anyways, speaking of that, I was going to read, I haven't submitted yet, but I wrote something yesterday about the history of my channel. And I'm going to cover at the beginning of my video tomorrow because it's something that should be covered in the beginning because it's kind of interesting. And it has to do with, the future of my channel. I'm going to ask both Gemini and ChatGPT what their advice is. I doubt it'll be anything that I can do or that, they'll leave. They'll probably, we'll see what happens. But I was going to do that here, but it would be a lot of reading and I'm already kind of wiped out. And this is a 2-hour video. But I'll cover that in the beginning of my next video and we'll see what's up. But, it's here, all this stuff. There's all these things that are converging into one apocalyptic moment, right? And so that's what I'm going to call this, the title of this video. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.